CSS to each target platform that you want to use. I'm going to be using the examples in Less, not to try to create a flame war between people that use Less and Sass, but more because it's the platform that we're currently using, so I have all the examples on it. Everything that I'll be talking can be done on both platforms really easily. So, talking about the mobile web. On the old days when we were developing, like 10 years ago, we had the screen, and the screen kept growing bigger and bigger, and we had all the space in the world to do everything. And we were very focused on desktops. But lately, a bit since the first iPhone came out, everybody started getting more and more focused on mobile environment and in developing for multi-screen, so the web became a bunch of screens. Now a developer cannot know if he's developing exclusively for desktop or for mobile. Most likely it's going to be a variety of screens that he has absolutely no control. So I've read somewhere that some guy even plugged the web browser into a screen on the fridge, so this it really removes all the control of where our pages are going to be deployed. In the future, well, nobody knows, but probably going to keep moving up. So, talking a little bit about what strategies have been done to tackle this multi-screen development. We have a classic development, which is pretty much, you just do a website, you don't care where it's going to be deployed. This is not optimal, but you can still find it a lot on the web. But then an adaptive design started emerging a couple of years ago, and then responsive came later. So, let's start with talking a little bit the differences between adaptive and responsive. The adaptive web came from probably when the first mobile browser started emerging around the release of the first iPhone. Probably the CEO of a company looked at it and thought, hey, we need a mobile website, and went to the team and said, hey guys, we have this fantastic platform which works great on desktop, but we also need this to be optimized for mobile. The team looked at the code base. They pretty much saw that it would be a major rewrite to simply adapt everything into a system that's adapted to everything exclusively. So they started building an experience that was targeted explicitly for mobile phones. This is really nice, but what actually happens is that when people when you write a code that's targeting different platforms at once, you normally end up with something that looks like this. This is taken from a Portuguese newspaper. And you end up with having a page that is extremely rich in terms of features, in terms of user journey, in your desktop view. But when you move into a mobile phone, you have a very poor experience. You normally minimize the amount of features that are available, and the users sometimes really struggle to find what they need in the mobile and they stop trusting the mobile page and use your system exclusively on the desktop. So a golden person probably went and thought, well, we should really solve this problem and try to have the same experience on both mobile and desktop. And by doing this, you actually thought, well, this actually may reduce maintenance costs. Right now, we have an adaptive version that releases one version for desktop and then for mobile. We need to have two teams tackling both sides independently. So let's try to make something responsive. So this talk is mostly based around what we built for eBay. It's my team built the tech lead. Sorry, my team built the deals pages for London and Germany, which through time, this was in last Christmas, through time they started being used across eBay globally, and you can find this page already in multiple places. And just to give a really quick overview so that you guys can visualize the rest of the talk, I'm going to give a quick demo. So the page that I'm going to be presenting is this one. You can find it also in .com. Here I'm using the example from UK. It's a fully responsive page which contains, well, what eBay does, listing items. And it's fully responsive. You can, if you open it on desktop, we actually lock the minimum width that you're allowed to go. But if you go into mobile, it becomes into a fully responsive experience and with shared code base across both places. There is one part that is not responsive. It shares exactly the same code base in terms of HTML, which is this menu up here. It's exactly the same HTML that you see for the menu here, but other than that, we apply some CSS mutations to have it with different stylings for desktop and mobile. It also allows to do some cool thing, which is you can pretty much we use the widget-oriented architecture that we've developed and which is based on this talk, and it allows for very interesting reusability and modularity. You can pretty much, giving you an example, for example, here I can pretty much pick up an element, remove the item from here to the top, and it simply gracefully adapts to where you wanted it. You can pick up anything that from anywhere and drop it any place you want, and things simply adapt to their containers. So I'm gonna go a little bit over this. So the concept here is that when you're building a responsive web page, you need to figure out how much adaptive you want to have it mixed with what's responsive. Pretty much you normally don't have a choice. There's some things that tend to be, for optimization purposes, adaptive on different environments, as the menu that I was referencing. But if you try to maximize the amount of responsive stuff that you can, then it gets really neat to develop code that you can deploy anywhere and stuff just gracefully adapts. So what ends up on actually happening is that you have an adaptive web which contains responsive contents inside. And the more you make your system responsive, the more the distance between what's responsive and adaptive decreases, and you start getting a very similar user journey. You start getting a more unique code base. But if you start increasing the distance between what's adaptive and responsive, so if the number of responsive elements within your system decreases, you actually start getting a very different user journey. You're getting a bigger code base, bigger maintenance costs, and a bigger it just gets bigger and bigger everything. So to solve this first part, I'm going to start with to give the example of that menu that I shown you, and go through a little bit of a technique that we've built, which is building less pathways to leverage browser detection. So most of the times when we're building adaptive systems, you have to detect which type of browser you have, or which type of platform you're targeting, and provide a different environment, a different code base. So, as I said before, all examples here are in Less. Because sometimes people don't know it, Less is a CSS preprocessor. You can find it over there in that URL. There are others, has SAS. This can be done on both of them. But for this example, we're using Less. So, in terms of modularity, Less allows us to write really, really atomic code. So, if you have any kind of widget, for example, the top categories, which was that one that has multiple items on it, you can have its own file, which contains a code that looks something like this, and you have everything really isolated. So you end up with having a file called a file for CSS for that widget type. You have JavaScript for that widget type and an HTML for that widget type. It gets everything really, really isolated, which allows you to, if you want to move it from one project to another, it becomes really, really easy. So in terms of Less structure, what people normally do also in SAS is that they have, it looks something like this. They have a main which includes everything else, and then they have then we have each of the elements isolated across them. So what you normally do is you import the main in its turn imports everything else, and you get a generated CSS file which contains everything. So what we did here to try to maintain exactly the same code base in terms of HTML and simply provide smaller CSS mutations, instead of importing the main, we actually added two new files. We added the devices for mobile and the devices for desktop. This allows us to, when doing browser detection, if your target is desktop, you invoke the compiled desktop CSS file. If the target is mobile, you include the mobile one. And this allows us to do some cool stuff, like using mixins to automatically generate CSS exclusively for that environment. So a mixin looks something like, the mixins that we've been using look something like this. You have an adaptive section, which triggers when you have your mobile flag to true, or you have an adaptive one which triggers when you have the desktop one. So what ends up happening is that you can, within your widget or within your environment, you can trigger very specific CSS elements to simply show up under the very targeted environments. So if you want, this is a more generalistic case, just targeting mobile and desktop. If you're having problems with Internet Explorer, you can apply the same concept where you just trigger a variable to target Internet Explorer, and then you put an adaptive mixin within it, and it will generate code. So in this case, if it's mobile, it gets a mobile background. If it's desktop, it gets a desktop one. So let's talk a bit also regarding the responsification of the environment. This first technique with less pathways allows us to generate specific CSS that targets environments. But we do want to try to keep the HTML as equal as possible across platforms. So we tried to do we also did a bunch of work on responsification that I'll try to share with you guys. So we did lots of research, and we started with checking out what kind of grid systems were out there. The most popular is, of course, Twitter Bootstrap, which it's really awesome. But in our case, we wanted to get a really optimized system, so we thought that it wasn't ideal. And what made us think about that was that when you're using grid systems, if you use a single markdown, you normally, when you're jumping from one system to another, when you they're mostly built to pick up an horizontal layout and to simply drop it as vertical. I know that Bootstrap allows us to put a bit more of control. I'll show you in a second. But most systems and most pages, what you do is this. A couple of years ago, transforming horizontal into vertical is something that has been available for more than 10 years. This screenshot comes from Windows Mobile on an old HTC that I had more than 10 years ago. And it pretty much already allowed to do this. You pretty much go there, you drop everything into a single column, and ta-da, it works. Of course, Bootstrap is much more advanced than that. And if you want to pick up an environment that has, for example, 3 columns and pass it into 2 columns, you can. You just have to add extra markup, and it will render in whatever scenario you want. So our issue when we analyzed systems, that most of them were using Markdown to control how the systems were getting displayed, and we wanted to minimize the amount of Markdown, especially because when it made the code really ugly to read, and every time you wanted to add an extra element, you had to add more and more and more code cloning, so it wasn't looking really well. So we decided to try something else, which was a widget-oriented architecture. So the concept is the following. You have a widget. You have an HTML class, an HTML element, which the only controlling element for responsification that you give it, you call it a widget. And then you have 2 rules. One is that when developing, the widget itself has to always be 100%. You cannot enforce it to have a size. This allows you, if I want to pick up a widget that you developed, I'll pick it up. I'll just dump it wherever I want. If it has 2,000 pixels width, I'm expecting that it will adapt to it. Well, if it's too big for your design, then center it or do something about it. But I'm expecting that if I drop it in something really large, it will adapt. Or that if you're putting it into something really tight, that it will also adjust to it. So what this allows is that if you develop all the widgets like this, a widget can actually know that it can have children widgets. And doing that, you can actually overwrite their internal widths. So each of the blue widgets that you see there, they all would be developed also with a concept. They're always 100%, they are dropped into a place and don't know their size. But the father can go there and simply overwrite the size of the children. And if he wants to have three columns, he just goes there and says, from now on you have 33% of width. And for them, they will still think it's 100%, but they will adapt to the place where they are. This allows for the responsification to go through really simple media queries. As you're building an isolated component, in this case an isolated widget, you can go and say, you know how you want their children to behave. So in this case, you can go and say under media queries, if you have a certain environment, for example, maximum width of 400 pixels, then you tell the children, guys, from now on you no longer have 33%, you now have 50, and you get an environment where you have 2 columns. This becomes really powerful when you're looking at code and the code becomes simply a sequence of widgets. You stop having responsification markdown existing in your HTML. And from then on, having code that is similar cross-platform becomes really, really easy. Within our environment, well, almost everything that we've built on that page becomes a widget. So if you have a banner on top, this is a widget that can be dropped wherever any other widget exists. A category is itself, it's another widget. The item within it, it's another widget. Even the links on the bottom, it becomes also a widget, which means that any of these elements can swap positions with any other, and everything will still adapt to their place. This becomes, as I was saying, really cool, because then you look at the code, and if you guys ignore the SP and the data banner, which are some controlling properties from eBay, you look at the code and you can really easily read what it is. You can go and say, okay, so first we start with a widget which is a header banner, which is an image. Then you start with a widget which is an horizontal navigation container. Then you have a widget which is a banner, another which is hero deals, another widget which contains top categories. You go into the categories and you see that you have a widget which contains an item. And this pretty much makes it really, really easy for anybody to go into a new code base that they've never seen it and simply immediately understand what they're touching. This also allows for any of these widgets to be taken into another project. And as long as you copy the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript that it contains, it will immediately start working under that environment, because by design they were developed to be completely isolated and atomic. So now going a little back into the HTML, if you guys seen this first example that I gave you, you can see here that exactly we are overwriting the children, in this case using a container, and overwriting a bit of styling from the children widget, and everything simply falls into place. So this was 20 minutes, 10 seconds. I was trying to speed up for time. If you guys have any questions, please, you have about 5 minutes to ask them. Yep.
What was the tool that you were using in Chrome when you were resizing?
It's Chrome DevTools.
Just what was it?
It's normal Chrome DevTools. Yeah. Okay.
Is there a reason why you use the translation instead of the HTML5 sections?
So the question was, why didn't we use more HTML5 tags, namely sections and so on? So the reason why we didn't do this is because eBay still has a big user base of really old browsers, and we would have to then use polyfills or stuff to target them. Yeah. So the question is, what's the difference between adaptive and responsive design? Adaptive design, you're building an environment that targets you're building unique systems that target platforms individually. So you build a design for the desktop, you build a design for mobile, for example. while responsive, it's you target all the designs at once. So you target a multi-screen environment, which allows your design to gracefully adapt from one system to another one, which is, if you give it a really, it's pretty much a shared code base across all environments. And if it's a really large screen, that it will adapt to that size. If it's a really small one, it will adapt to that size gracefully. Yeah.
Does responsive design include customizing the images, like when you're working with desktop objects, you send it to your image,
Yeah.
or image like a mobile
So,
browser,
yeah.
you send more like a smaller.
So the question here is, how does it work with images regarding responsive environments? Normally, when you have a smaller screen, you don't need a really big image. You can provide a much smaller image. So that part within eBay, the platform itself, we can enable it to provide smaller images depending on the environment. So in this case, we really didn't have to worry much about it. So I know there is another talk that's going to start immediately afterwards. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to stop. Thank you all for dropping by.